so excited to have you here for our Pricing for Prosperity session today. I'm going to go ahead and share our slides. And I'm also going to let you have a little bit of a heads up about something else that's important here. So we sent over, if you haven't gotten it already, make sure to go into your email inbox, grab this Pricing for Prosperity mini course book that was sent over to you. I think it was sent over last night. And this is like I said, it's a mini course book. So today's session is a master class of a larger course that I teach. It's normally a month-long program. It's called Pricing for Prosperity. And we distilled down kind of some of the best of today as a really important conversation with you all about the ways in which you need to be looking at clients and who you're really here to serve, the needs that they have, and the services and pricing you can offer to really align. And so this workbook has some really important things for you to take away from today's session. It has the opportunity, if you want to pull this up in like an Adobe or a preview, if you're on a Mac, you can take notes on each page so that it's kind of aligned with the content as we move through. And then at the end here, we have some action items that you can take from today's session. So we've got a book recommendation. This is a book that we normally give our course members. We've got some exercises you can do that we'll talk through today. Some brainstorming you can do, and then a series of journal questions that we've offered here to help you move through this work. So please take advantage of that today as we move through. And like I said before, if you have questions, just go ahead and throw those in the chat. With that said, I want to just take a moment to talk real quick about what this session is all about. And for me, really, this segment of the Pricing for Prosperity work is really all about alignment. And what I mean by alignment is when I was scaling my company, really started to notice when my pricing was off track because myself and the clients that I were serving were out of alignment. We were either out of alignment because they weren't valuing the work that me and my team had to offer. We were out of alignment because our core values actually ended up being quite different. Or we were out of alignment because the work that my team and I did, was different than truly what they needed. And so what this work has come out of is probably some hard lessons that I've learned during that period. And the fact that I've learned to recognize how important it is for us to start with a really clear understanding of who we are and who we're here to serve prior to getting into what it is we offer and how we price it. And so this is meant to be a critical foundation as you build bigger pricing, and also as you start to really go out and after those clients that you feel completely called to serve. One of the things you'll hear me say repeatedly today is that pricing is only an issue in the absence of value. And I say this because I know that in order to align your work and your worth, we have to really identify, attract, and align the clients that we are truly here to serve. And so we all know that there are clients out there. We've all had these clients where you could never get them to pay you enough money. You're like, the work is just not worth it. So be on your way. And it's really, something happened this past year, I think, particularly for us women in business, where we were like, man, if I am going to work in the midst of a global pandemic, it is only going to be with people who I love working with, who I feel really called to serve. So I truly believe it's really time for us to stop serving people we don't like, regardless of how much money they pay us, so that we can really spend our time and energy with our best clients that truly value the work that we do. And to just make this a touch more personal, we let go of one of our kind of last legacy clients, if you will, this past week. We all have had those clients who we serve as we're getting started, and we're still kind of unsure of what our work and our worth looks like. Maybe they have different core values than us. We let one of the last ones go, actually the very last one go 2 weeks ago, and it felt so freeing. And it's funny, a lot of those clients I've also found end up being our lowest paying clients, the ones that take the most from us from an energetic standpoint. And by comparison, we will do, probably $500,000 in revenue this year off of existing clients, clients that we just love, that are really interested in working with us, have started with a primary scope or project, and then say, I would like more of that, please. And so there's something really beautiful that starts to happen when we get crystal clear on who we're here to serve and then start to really build our offerings in alignment with that. So that's where we're headed today. Again, gentle reminder for those of you who are joining, use the chat as a way to ask questions, share thoughts or feedback with each other. And again, Sarah is here to help and keep an eye on those things and let me know if there's anything that needs to be brought to the surface. Okay, so with all that said, feel free to chime in the chat if you feel called an answer to one of these questions. I like to just open up this space, and really, to me, when I teach this work, it is a little bit of a sacred space because we're talking about money, which is a bit of a sensitive subject for us all. And so if we can be, really caring with each other by getting to know each other just a touch better, I love to do that in the chat. So please take a second to chime in and let me know either how you're feeling today, what is something big and meaningful that's happened this week, or just anything else you feel called to share. Like why was it important for you to show up and be a part of this session today? I would love for you to just go into the chat and share those things just as a way to kind of activate some sharing and conversation there. And I will make sure to keep an eye on that chat panel as we move through. I'm also curious to know where you're signing on from. So I know that we got our first international member of this community this week, which is very, very exciting for us. So please use that chat panel to show up and share where you're signing on from, how you're feeling today, anything else that you feel called to share to introduce yourself with everyone here. Okay, awesome. To give you a sense of where we are headed next, this is our agenda today. So we are looking at 4 key areas, but really 3 key areas, and then some wrap up and homework assignments if you want them to be homework assignments. They're more of just takeaways, things that you could do next if you feel called to. So the first segment of our series today is called Your Unique Light. It's really about tapping into the core of who you are and the highest work you're here to offer. The second piece, we'll be talking about persona work. And I know that there's a lot of different ways people do client avatars and personas. My team and I do things a little bit differently, so we'll talk about that today. I'm also going to give you a template that you can take away and build something of your own. And then we're going to talk about the importance of lining your price with your value. And I just want to say welcome again to everyone. We've got someone here from Amsterdam, Los Angeles, Southern Illinois. Really, really excited to have everyone here. So thank you everyone for chiming in. Okay, so today is going to be fast. It's going to be full of information. The one thing I want to remind you, if you're somebody who started on late or needs to leave early, is that this is now a part of your member portal experience. If you haven't taken an opportunity yet, if you're a brand new community member like many of you are, please, please, please take some time to explore the Finding Fearless community member portal. It is chock full of so much content I've lost track. Everything that we've created from an educational standpoint over the past 2 years or so is in that member portal. And we've got workshops and content on everything from pricing all the way down to branding, all the way down to marketing, business development, you name it, technology. There's all sorts of sessions in there recorded for you, along with all the resources from those sessions. So if we had slides or workbooks or takeaways or materials, it's meant to be this treasure trove that you can go into and draw out the resources that are relevant to where you're at currently in your business. So please take some time to explore it and know that if you don't get to stay for the full session today, we're going to take all this content and put it in that member portal for you so that you have the ability to come back to this work over time. I also want you to recognize and take a deep breath. I need to do it too. Pricing is a lot of work. It is something that is a deeply emotional process, and that's something that I don't think everybody talks about because a lot of times our work and our worth are tied together. And when I teach this course in longer form, we spend a whole first week just focusing on looking at our self-worth. And because I really want to dive into this heart of things today, this masterclass version, it's really important that you be gentle with yourself, recognize that there's going to be emotions that might come up for you, and we're not going to learn everything today. There's going to be opportunities to do more of this work in the future. And again, it may take time. So take advantage of that playback. But I also want you to remember that even if today puts you a little bit at the edge of your comfort zone, that's where you're going to do some amazing growth. So if you feel like some of these concepts are new or a little bit uncomfortable, that's okay. And as you approach kind of your limits, this is the mantra or quote that I want you to remember, that the only limits in life are the ones we impose on ourselves. So I want you to approach today as if your life and your potential for growth in business and anywhere else is limitless, and like you can build and be anything in your business and in your pricing. Okay, with that said, let's dive into the work. So, like I said, we are going to start off with what I call your unique light. And this is really looking at why you are here on planet Earth. I am not the first person to talk about this topic. Some of my other favorite teachers, like Simon Sinek, he has a great book, Start With Why. There's also a great book by Gay Hendricks called The Big Leap. And all of these amazing teachers talk about the importance of discovering why you're really here on Earth and aligning your work with that so that you can make the biggest impact. I truly believe that when you are standing in your unique light, the clients you're meant to serve can see you shining and then come find you. And I always have seen that when you do that, the money follows in suit. So, the big $1,000,000 question is, what is that for you? I'm curious to know if any of you on the call today feel like you know what your unique light is. I know some of you really well. Maria, it's good to see you. Some of you have really, uncovered your unique light. And so if you feel called to share what that is in the chat, I would love to know that. But in the meantime, I'm going to tell you a little bit about mine. My unique light, my why I'm here, is really about leading others, and it's also about something that I call the ripple. So my goal, why I'm here on Earth, is to ensure that I leave a legacy of female-founded businesses that leave this planet in a better place than when they found it. And for me, the ripple looks like if I can change the life of one woman, I know she can go out and change the life of another woman, and that ripple will only grow from there. And so, this is not something I discovered overnight. I didn't just wake up one day and be like, my why is X. It's something that took me a long time and a lot of twists and turns to find. And then it took me even longer to be able to own and embrace that and say to other people. When I was little, being a girl and being a leader meant I was called bossy, I was called controlling, I was called a bitch a lot, and I'm not afraid to swear, so sorry if that surprises anybody today. But as I've grown up, I've learned how to really tap into what I would call the divine feminine, to use my leadership abilities, not just in a masculine manner, but to take that work and that ability to create content, programs, courses, teams, and companies that I lead with grace and a deep and devoted sense of purpose. I embody this ability in action because it allows me to serve others, which is like my core love language is acts of service, gift giving, and words of affirmation. And by serving others, I can create magic. I can help people heal themselves and the planet by helping women embrace and own their incredible abilities. So that's why I am here. I'm very curious to know from you, if you have any inkling whatsoever, what is your unique light? And I'm going to give you a little hint here. One of the ways that we may be able to tap in and find our unique light is by recognizing that whatever the highest value offer you have to bring to this world is, whether that's the service you offer right now or something that you believe has a lot of earning potential, that's probably tapped in and aligned around your unique light. The situations where I have made the most money in my life and also made the most impact have always been when I am showing up and leading in the ways that I talked about. So marinate on that a little bit. There's an opportunity, like I said, to share in the chat. This is something to take away maybe for those of you who don't know yet. But another thing I want you to think about here is the really critical difference between areas of expertise and your unique light. And so, what I mean by that is some of us get caught in our comfort zone. I am, for example, very good at sales and I love selling. Um, there's a competitive person in me that loves seeing a deal close. I love being able to take those dollars and do amazing things with them for my company and my team. But one of the ways we can recognize if we're operating in our areas of expertise versus our unique light, which our unique light is another way to put this in Gay Hendricks' work, as he calls it, our zone of genius. The difference between being in that area of expertise and your unique light is, can you teach somebody else to do it just like you can? So, for example, I know I have some accounting professionals in my network and in this room. If you can teach somebody else how to do a cash flow forecast like you can, that's an area of expertise. It's not your unique light. It's not, an area that's unique to you. But if you are the only one in your team or your company that can have an empathetic conversation with your clients that helps them navigate what that cash flow means, that's probably your unique light. So if you can teach it to somebody else to do it just like you, if it can be outsourced or taught along the way, the answer is yes to those questions. It's not your unique light. It's just something that you're an expert at. And we love being an expert. It's so comfortable being an expert, being someone in the room who can handle it and who has the answers. But ultimately, again, our highest work and highest worth isn't where we're an expert. It's just above that, a little bit outside our comfort zones. So if you just say no, you might be like, why are we talking about this today? Because I promised you some work on pricing, but I promise you as well that the two of these things are tied to each other, because we need to start thinking about approaching our work from the perspective of understanding when our energy feels low and drained, and when we feel like we're in a space where we are growing and we're changing and we're committed to doing the work. Energy can tell us a lot, again, about where our highest worth is, because those opportunities follow where we are uniquely tapped into our highest abilities. And it also, quite frankly, means that we need to start looking at our boundaries, because if we're going to really spend our time doing that highest work, we can't be saying yes to opportunities and things that are not aligned with it. So we have to start to build boundaries and let our light stand on its own, so that the clients we want to work with can see that we're a fit for them, and that we can maintain a solid relationship with them where we stay in that unique light, we stay in that area of area of genius with firmness and clarity. I oftentimes see when people are starting out, if scarcity mentality shows up, we might take on a project where we're like, oh, well, I can do it and I can make some money. And those things are great. Sometimes we have to do that to get by. But ultimately, if we're growing, we should be looking, if we feel called to either partner with, outsource, or grow a team that can handle the things that are not in our unique light. And the reason I also talk about this is when we can see kind of these highs and lows between our energies, where we can see, our boundaries are maybe, being a little bit flexed and not in alignment. We can really start to remember why we are here and what our passion is, and continue to rekindle that fire by connecting with our purpose, which is what is found when we're connected in our unique light. So, it's important that this process is one of reflection. I really, really encourage you to take your journal questions away in the workbook and think about this at a deeper level, and really diving into this ask of, why am I here? Who am I here to serve? And I call it unique light because it is meant to light you up. It is meant to feel like you are in your full golden glory when you're aligning your energy, your boundaries, and your purpose and your work all together, so that you can serve the people you're really here to work with. And I just want to give a little shout out and thank you to Mariette for her chime in the chat. She said, Thank you, Madeline, for the light conversation. My professional purpose is to educate the new age bookkeeper community from the inside out to develop their value and deeper impact on their ideal clients so they can serve with purpose, intention, and charge what they are worth and deserve. It is not easy to write down, but it helps me to write it down more and then pivot as we learn more about ourselves, our life, and the ideal clients that light us up. I love this feedback, Mariette. You are on a journey of growth and transformation. Watching you build your business has been a delight. I know that the people you work with feel so called to work with you. So I think you're a beautiful, beautiful example with this. And I would just encourage anyone else that feels like, maybe you don't know yet, but you've got some sort of inkling. Again, share along in the chat for sure. Okay. So here's how things are going to work today. Again, we're going to have some opportunity for discussion if you feel called. That discussion can be done in the chat, or you can unmute yourself or raise a hand if you'd like to ask a question. Again, I want to encourage you to take all the notes that you feel called to. Share concisely when you feel called to. Again, live or in the chat. And I want you to dig deep with all the energy you have today. Remembering that if you don't have the energy to go super deep today, if you just have the energy to show up, thank you for whatever you're bringing to the table. And remember, you can return to this work time and time again in your member portal after the session. Okay, slides will be shared in Slack. They'll also be shared in your member portal afterwards. So just know that if you want to read these back or watch the playback, they're going to be available to you. Okay, so I want to kick us off with another quote. And this actually comes from the opening of a book I've been working on. So part of my unique light is, sharing my work with the world. And the way I process things is through writing. And my book starts, "Some of us are born burning. Others show up smoldering, coming into this world with a quiet passion and wisdom way beyond their years, and an empathy so deep it is seared within their souls." And I go on from this quote to talk about my sons. I have 2 boys, and Caden is 9 and Alder is 3. And they could not be more different. One of them is the textbook definition of an extrovert. Alder is all smiles or all frowns. He is a performer by nature. He loves putting on a show. He has the worst case of FOMO of anybody I know. And he always wants to be in a room with lots of people. And my other son, Caden, is a bit more like me. He knows how to tell a great joke and perform a magic trick, but he would much rather be alone reading a book somewhere. He knows how to perform when it's the time, but he is a deeply introverted person and an extrovert only when he has to be. And a lot of people don't know that about me because I am very good at playing an extrovert on TV. I grew up doing theater performances and as a dancer and having to give presentations throughout my life and career. And I got really good at kind of putting on a show. But what I really started to tap into later in my career was this real pull I felt all the time, which was that when I wasn't speaking, I wanted to be hiding in my hotel room. I am not a person who lives for a moment of networking. I would much rather be at a virtual networking because I can show up and write and share in the chat, or I would much rather be on a one-to-one moment with somebody because I get a little overwhelmed and it really drains my energy to be in those sorts of situations. And so I share all of that because I think it's really important for us to talk about energy, because if we are aligned with our unique light, the things that we are doing should create, give, and sustain our energy. So Mariette kind of hinted at this for us in the chat. She was one step ahead. But this is an important question to ask yourself. What lights you up? Take a moment here in your notebook right now to make a little list of all the things that light you up. And when I say light you up, it should, again, create, give, and sustain your energy in your life. And this list doesn't just have to be in your work life. We can definitely think about the things that make us smile, give us energy, excite us, call you to create your best and highest work. Who are the clients is another good question to ask here. Who are the clients that you are so happy to get a call or an email from them, and share in the chat like who those people are, but more importantly, what is the work that you're doing with them. Because I know a lot of people, for example, who don't think they're a trusted advisor, but when then they talk about the clients that they love to serve, they talk about, well, I get to sit down with them once a month and we have this in-depth conversation, and they share about what's going on in their life and not just in their business, and then we talk about strategy, and I'm like, okay, so you're a trusted advisor. List, take a moment to list also in your life, make a list of all the things that warm you up on the inside, what inspires you, what makes you shine. All of these things, it doesn't have to just be what you're doing right now. This could be past, present, future. Think back to times that you've been working or you've been living, um, and have made you quite happy. And for me, this is really, what creates the differentiator for me in my life is I used to talk to people about what I do for work. So people would say, "What do you do?" That question we all kick off networking with, and I would say, "Well, I do, some marketing, and I do some business development, and I do some strategy work and all those things." And people would kind of walk away being like, what do you really do, or what does your company do? Because I was talking about what I did for work, and again, it varied over time depending on who I worked for. And then when I built and started to scale my company, it continued to evolve. Now, when I answer that question, I say something wildly different. I say, my work is really about helping underrepresented founders use entrepreneurship as a path to equity so that they can build better lives for themselves and for those that work for them, and maybe help heal the planet in the process. Something along those lines. It's always a little bit different. I might tweak and tailor it depending on who I'm talking to, but that's my work. So, what is your work? Not what you do for work. What is your work? What is the work you're here to do on earth? That is a lot bigger than the tasks you do every day. It's a lot bigger than the clients that you serve. It really, to find this place of alignment, we have to be able to answer this question. And if you've been sitting here kind of starting to build your list, I would just ask you to take a moment to also put a little asterisk next to anything on this list that you're already doing, you're already living, you're already in alignment with. Because I think sometimes we beat ourselves up because we wish we could be living in our life all the time. And I wish that was the case. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I would say more than 50% of the time. Actually, closer to 75% these days. I wish I had more time for my writing. But I have been really busy scaling our team, and leadership is a part of my life. And so I just want you to star all the things that you feel like you're living right now. And then I just want you to circle the things on that list where you're like, I need to do a little bit more of that. I miss that. And again, other parts of my life, I'm a mom. There's a lot of things that I do in my mom life that I bring into the company in the way I lead. And so I don't really see those things as separate. We have to find a sense of harmony between our work and our lives. And if we're super, super lucky, the way we live our lives align with our work. So yeah, just take a moment and star what is really standing out for you as something you're aligned with right now, and then circle the things that you need to call back into your life. And thank you again for the chimes in the chat. Love the shares that we're seeing there, so feel free to continue to add in as you feel called. Now, I also think that it's really important, again, to make some space to reflect. So if you feel called to right now, you can absolutely raise a hand and unmute yourself, and share, what you're finding as we ask those questions about your light. Or if you are a little bit introverted like myself and you don't want to chime in, feel free to share in the chat. But does anyone feel called? And again, this is a safe container of space. This is a really special community of people who only want to support you in whatever you're doing and uncovering. So does anyone feel called to share a little bit about their light? I don't want to have to be mean and pick on somebody who's feeling introverted or tired this morning. But I would love for at least one share. Looking over here at my chat panel. Algerlyn, I'm going to call you into the conversation. Oh, Rachel shared in the chat too. Algerlyn, what's coming up for you here?
Um, my light, I feel like, has always been finding ways to help people feel included and taken care of.
Mm,
So part of that nurturing, but also the coaching part of things, like helping them find ways to like get motivated and um, either to like reach the results that they need or to just get going. I really, really feel lit up when I get to do that, to nurture and coach.
mm. I love that, and I resonate with that so much. Rachel shared in the chat, she said, I really love professionally being able to create impact on someone else's business. I know exactly what that feels like when you work with somebody and they don't know how to do something, or they don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, and you can come in and make that impact. It feels so good and so aligned. I get that 100%. Does anyone else feel called to share? All right, we're a quiet bunch this morning. Hopefully we can all, I'm gonna grab my coffee, not that I need it, but hopefully as you feel comfortable, let's continue to chime in the chat. Cecily says, I'm having trouble figuring out what lights me up today. Cecily, thank you for being honest. I didn't find this in an instant. It's a big, big question. And I would encourage for those of you who are still, struggling or a little low energy today, again, be proud of just showing up for yourself today and take this as a takeaway. Take some time to think about this and take some time to journal about this. As you're doing things in your day, think about how it feels when you're doing it. That's one really, really great way to see and find our light is to recognize when it feels lit up. Recognize, for me, it's like a warmth in my chest. I get a little giddy. Teaching this is a huge part of my light, and the team, my team saw me yesterday. I was like, it's almost game day. I'm so hyped up. I'm so excited. So things that feel like that probably have something to do with your light. As we're shared in the chat, art, singing, performing, writing, research, reading, bringing the right people together to make something happen, helping people connect why, who they are and why they're here on earth, helping people navigate the relational worlds and reality. These are beautiful. These are beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Ezra. Thank you for everyone for sharing. Okay, so here are some of mine, and I won't tell too many stories here for the sake of time, but these are some of my really core areas of light. And I think it's also challenging because if we just think about our light in terms of our work, we sometimes think, oh, that can't be a part of it. So I love spending time in nature. It reminds me, that I'm a small piece of a bigger, much more beautiful picture. And that's where I go to reflect and to write. And so, to do my work, I spend time in nature when I need to unplug from this laptop and get away. So I will be in 2 weeks, in upstate New York in a cabin in the woods with my dog and my manuscript working away because this is really important to me and it's part of the way I was raised and a lot of time in the outdoors. I love to cook. I love to nourish my body. It gives me gratitude for the simple things. It makes me feel loving to myself. I really struggled with eating for a long time in my life, and disordered eating is something I've only really started to overcome in the past 5 years. And so cooking is a way that I unplug, and I also think of new things. I always listen to podcasts while I am cooking, and it's a great way for me to come up with new ideas and to work a different side of my brain. Movement is essential to who I am as a person. I grew up as a dancer and a soccer player, and I danced all the way into college before injuries stopped that practice for me. And so, part of finding alignment in myself each day is starting with a daily physical practice and getting up and moving and walking around. and really helps me tap into a different divine type of energy. Many of you who follow me on social also know I'm a bit of a yogi, and spoiler alert, I'm looking at figuring out how we can bring more physical practice in um, through this community, because I happen to be connected to quite a few amazing yoga instructors who are willing to show up and share and teach for this community. I know we're already taking care of our minds with our Headspace membership, but I think we could use some care for our bodies. So if you're interested in that, let me know in Slack or in the chat, because we're putting some cool pieces together there. Writing, I've talked about this a lot, so I don't really need to say much more here, but it has been a passion since I was as soon as I could do it. When I was a little kid, I would tell stories to tape recorders before I could write. And then if you go in my mom's attic, you will find boxes of all my journals and stories and sagas because I've been writing for as long as I can remember. Teaching, obviously I love to show up and share. That's how I get all these words out of my brain and into the hands of others so they can make use of them. And strategizing, it makes me feel like a badass every time I can bring a really big strategy to the table. There's nothing cooler than getting to be a part of other companies' strategies and seeing them be successful and come to life. And ultimately, I know that by helping other companies strategize and succeed, I'm helping them build a better world. I'm not just tackling the problems over here in my corner, in my lane. I'm helping them do that in whatever their unique light is as well. But I mentioned this word before, and I'm a big believer in them. I'm really working on them in my personal life. So, boundaries are really, really important, because one of the things that happens when we start to stand in our unique light is we attract people our way, which at first feels really, really, really amazing. But one of the things that you will recognize is if you don't take some boundaries around that light and set yourself up to hold that space, you might be pushed onto a different path. And it also might lead to other people trying to dim your light. I've had this happen, unfortunately, in a couple of different ways. Personally, I've had people try to steal our copyrighted content, and I've also taken opportunities that weren't really meant for me, because it was a lot of money, or because it felt like people expected me to do those things. And so, really, I always come back when I've strayed from the path to my light by recognizing that, wow, it strayed from my light. It led me away from what I really loved doing. I didn't have time to move my body and cook a dinner I loved. I didn't have time to write. I didn't feel like I was teaching and strategizing. I was just getting paid a lot of money to do something I was an expert in. And so I think it's really important for us to look at, where do we hold really firm boundaries so we can stay in our lane, our beautiful, special lane. And, again, the hint here is if it doesn't lead to your unique light or lead back to your unique light, it might be breaking a boundary. So if you're new to boundary work, these are some questions to ask yourself to double check and go back and reflect and say, is this breaking a boundary? First, we have to know what boundaries are. So boundaries are the commitments and decisions we make that allow us to say yes to the things that we want to do and to say no to the things that are not meant for us. And one of the ways that we can start to look at our boundaries is, again, just as simple as what do we say yes and what do we say no to? Or what do we allow in our lives and what do we not accept from others? And one of the things that I like to ask at this moment is, I think we're all at various degrees. Some days I've got like the best boundaries ever, and some days my boundaries are blown wide open. And it's something we should always be working on. And so one thing you might want to write about here is, where do your boundaries feel solid? Like, where are they firm? Where do you hold them fast? A boundary for me is my kids. Like, if somebody does something that's going to affect my kids, I'm like a mama bear. I'm going to come after your ass. Like, I am really intense. Um, but also, there are areas where our boundaries are, a little bit flexible. And so for me, when it comes to integrating my work and my motherhood, that has to be a little flexible. My work schedule always has to align around my children for a variety of reasons, partially because I want it to be that way, and because I am a co-parent. And so I need to have the ability to show up for my kids when they get sick or when care falls through. And so I've had to be a little bit more flexible in the way I leverage my time in order to be able to show up in the ways that I want, both as a mom and as a work at work. It's also why being in a corporate environment really didn't work for me, because I was so sick of anybody judging, the ways that I needed to be flexible in my life. Another question to ask here is, where do they falter or feel too flexible? One of the ways that we know that a boundary is being broken is because we feel stretched thin. And so it's really important to look at your life and your work and say, oh, where have I stretched too far? How can I pull this back in? And then another question to ask there is, where do they need to be strengthened? And, the other question, when we start looking at boundaries, when we start to see what it is and where they're all kind of sitting, you can start asking yourself some other questions, like, why do your boundaries feel the way they do? If you feel stretched, then why? Why? Is it because you said yes to too many projects because you were after the revenue? Is it because you said yes to a client you didn't really like because you wanted the money? Is it because you said yes to a plan you didn't want any part of because you were trying to make sure that people liked you? You know, so again, ask yourself, where do you feel stretched too thin? Where do you feel this most in your life? And again, if you feel called to share anything about your boundaries and your work with them, again, I have a book on my bedside table right now called Boundary Boss. I would highly recommend it to anyone who's working on boundaries. I'm building new boundaries in my life, in all of my relationships, not just in my work, but with my family. And if it's something that you're digging into, or you've done some work here already, please use the chat as a way to share here. From here, what I want you to recognize is that, even though this work on its surface might not seem related to pricing, this work is really the other side of the pricing coin. So I believe, and I've seen in my work over the past decade, that when you align with your highest purpose, your highest potential price tends to follow. And so our highest purpose happens when we are standing in our unique light, we're staying in our lane, and we're really living out our true calling. And so that true calling comes into our lives when we stand in our light and we let ourselves shine. So here's how to know that you're on to something. There's this beautiful braiding that will happen between your values, your work, and its meaning. So when it comes to values, it's something that brings you closer to the people that share them and amplifies them through action. And if you haven't already done core value work, oh man, I love it. We have a session on it in your member portal. We have a session from January of 2020 called, it's something along the lines of like aligning your values with your ideal clients. And there's we've got two sessions on it, both of which have been taught with Emily Sikorsky, a dear friend of mine, and Misty Mejia also helped teach one. So go find that in your member portal. We also recommend that as a takeaway today. If you haven't already, really tap into your core values, because what you will find that once you have your values in alignment and you weave them with your work and your meaning, you're going to find that your values bring you closer to people that share them and amplify them through action. The one thing I will say about values is that they don't mean anything if they're just on paper. I've been to way too many company conference rooms that have core values plastered on the wall and then turned around and been in a cafeteria where everybody was depressed because the company was not embodying those core values through action. So values are not for walls or websites. They're for action. They're for the ways we show up in the world. Our work. So again, it's our work. It's not the thing we do for work. It starts to feel like a calling. And even on the hardest days, it's something that you find passion in. We had a really hard Q1 this year as a company. We were on the tail end of the pandemic panic. We had clients who were booked all the way through year end and a big, amazing pending contract. that due to legal stuff took about 6 months to close. And Q1 was projected to be huge for us. And then we took a really big dip in revenue in February. And I was terrified. And it was the hardest thing ever to continue to show up every day. But I have a level of trust and faith in the work that I'm doing at this point in my life. And I dragged my ass out of bed every day and meditated and continued to show up for the work because I believe in it so much. And really, we came out of it stronger than we've ever been. We're going to hit well over $1 million in sales this year. We're hiring 4 people in the next month. And if this work didn't mean so much then to me, I probably would have given up, quite honestly. So, everything good is on the path of aligning your work and your worth. And then the last is this piece of meaning. I just talked about some real hardships and some real lessons, but I now see the learnings in all of those. And those of you who know me at a personal level know I've been through a little bit more than that. So losing some revenue wasn't the scariest thing I've been through in my life. But really, recognizing that the things that we experience, because they're aligned with our purpose, they have a level of meaning to them. So I really find a lot of amazing things happen when we find this sense of light and we align these three things and kind of weave or braid them together. So again, if you're still kind of questioning, what is your unique light? I really recommend you to go look at those three areas. What are your values? What is your work? What gives you meaning? What feels like your purpose? And how do they come together to create your calling and to create your unique light? So again, anyone else who feels called to share them now that we've talked about it in a little more depth. And there were some other great shares, when I was talking about boundaries, Rachel said, I love, this talk about boundaries. Boundaries are evolving for me. I've grown a lot in this area in this last year. Business will teach you a lot about boundaries, y'all. So I get that, Rachel. As we're shared, I have also been exploring boundaries through art. There's so much here. I love the integration of these three. And Elgin shared that she loved exploring boundaries through art. I'm very curious, Ezra. You might have to, if you have any links to your artwork, we would love to see that in the chat. Okay, so other important questions you can ask yourself at this moment is, who am I? What is my why? Again, if you want, go read Simon Sinek's book if you haven't already. What lights me up inside? What is my brand? What can I give to the world that makes me feel most valuable? Again, when I'm showing up and sharing in this way, whether I'm making no money or all the money in the world, I love doing things that make me feel the most valuable. And I've also seen, again, over time with every client that I've coached, that the money follows. The money follows. When we're doing the things that feel most valuable, the money follows. So these are some questions to ask yourself. We've got even more in that workbook we sent over. And asking these questions and answering them is going to probably take some time. These are great. Just pick one out of this list. Who am I? Go for a walk. Think it over. Journal on it. The answers that come, though, will inspire the story that becomes the foundation of who you are as a business owner, as a leader, as a teacher, as a brand. All of those things should be coming from this foundation of your unique light. What I oftentimes see early in business, and I myself did this, is we're not quite comfortable stepping into our light. And so many of you know that this company used to be called Fearless in Training. And that was the brand I was comfortable being when I was a sole consultant, just trying to sell myself and my consulting services, my ability to show up and train you and be an educational expert. But my true calling is to scale a pretty powerhouse company. And I really love doing that. And we needed a brand that represented that and that called in the clients we were really here to serve. And so we took a healthy dose of our own medicine last year as our team expanded and we rebranded. And the interesting thing about last year was I watched so many women rebrand their businesses because I think a lot of people were playing it safe before. And something about the pandemic shook the sleep off of all of our eyes and made us go, man, if I'm really going to work this hard during a global pandemic, it's got to be doing what I want with who I want to serve and it's got to be connected to my why. And so those rebrands were a lot of fun, and they were a lot bolder. That's what I loved, is all the brands that we built last year were super bold, and they were all women that were really embracing who they are now in business, which I love. So to dovetail that kind of brand question, I think there's also a really important question to ask of how can I share my light in a bigger way. So for those of you that know your light is what your light is, or even for those of you who have a hunch of what it might be, I just want you to really ask yourself this question of how can I share my light in a bigger way. There's another really impactful piece of work that when we teach this as the full form course that comes through. It's Tara Moore's work on playing big, and Tara's work transformed my life because it made me realize that my work could be so much bigger than myself, and my earning potential could be so much bigger than just what I paid myself. And getting to share my light in a bigger way means that I get to pay a whole entire team of humans to come work with me and work for me, and that is so much a part of my light. I can't even tell y'all. It's so exciting to get to make 4 job offers in 1 month. I've never done that before. And to get to pay women that were looking for more flexible work environments, good money, and give them opportunity that they might not have had otherwise. Like, that is some really cool shit. And so, maybe you have a little idea. I often find we have a little ember in us that is all about, oh man, I'll share some that I've heard before. Really, I would love to get to the point where I could sell my firm and build an animal sanctuary that takes care of animals. That's what I've heard. I want to get to the point where I sell my company and be able to invest and give back to other female founders. I want to be able to grow a team of 100 women that stay at home and they're all able to work flexibly with their kids. Those are all dreams I've heard, and that is about playing with your light in a much bigger way. So maybe you've spoken about it before, maybe it's hiding in a journal somewhere, maybe you've shared it just with a few close friends, but I really want you to consider, what would it look like if you shared that work with the world? And I ask you this because we as women tend to play small and play safe, and we settle for smaller stages or opportunities, or we box ourselves into corners of only creating certain kinds of content because it feels comfortable. And this is not just a woman thing. There's a lot of people that are more comfortable playing on a smaller stage. But growth is about getting uncomfortable. So I believe, and I know that you do too, probably deep, deep down, if we were to take off all of the layers of doubt, that you have something really important to share with the world. And I want you to be thinking about how you can take that passion in your light and your expertise and share them in a much bigger way to make that big impact. So, my question for you is, after all, if you don't set that goal out there, how are you even going to begin to achieve it? So, whatever that bigger thing is, take a moment to jot it on paper. Better yet, if you have a goal, write it down. You're over 60% more likely to achieve it simply by writing it down. And the last question I want to ask you here is to really look at yourself and say, who will benefit most from hearing my story? Because behind each and every one of our lights is a story, and I'm, as you can tell, a little bit of a storyteller. I've also, like I said, been working on a book that shares more of my story. But it wasn't until I recognized that other people could benefit from my story that I started sharing it. And it was a huge part of my light, and it's a huge part of the impact I'm here to leave on the world. So I won't tell it all. You'll have to buy the book for that. But I will say that I personally shied away from sharing my story and even hid it from other people for a really long time because there was nothing glamorous about being a divorced single mom by the time I was 22. However, it was only when I started to open up about my experiences to other women that I realized that they saw themselves in my story. It was in sharing my experiences that I was able to connect with women and all sorts of people from all walks of life on a much deeper level. And I also started to be able to make a bigger impact because when those people related to where I had come from, they understood what made me so passionate about empowering other women and underrepresented founders. So, asking this question is really about realizing that your story is bigger than yourself and that in sharing it, it can benefit others. It will also help you get really clear when it comes time to create content that really shares this story in a concise way and draws in the clients that you're meant to serve. And so, for me, sharing this story, I only share bits and pieces depending on where I feel called these days. But again, when people know why my work is about what it is, why I feel so called to serve underrepresented founders and make sure that entrepreneurship is a path to equity for them, that really brings everything into perspective for people for why I do the work that I do and why I'm so passionate about it. I also want to tell you that, in addition to this silly boy up here. You can't see the other one. The other one is in the car. My passionate for leadership is so much bigger than myself. Again, my story is so much bigger than myself. And so for me, I am at a point in my life where I mentor and I coach and I teach other people about, really stepping into this light as a way to give back, whether that's my crazy kiddos. This is one of my former mentees. I, do this work with my team and my clients because my why is also really about helping others. I am happiest when I am creating magic, and my biggest dream is to use my work in some way to help heal people in the planet. And so, all of these things align when that happens. Cecily, we had seen a hand raised. Do you want to unmute and share?
I do. Thank you. I was just thinking about your story and how I first met you at one of those QuickBooks, I think,
Connect, yeah. Or no,
things.
it was
And
a QuickBooks event. It was one of the small ones, wasn't it, Cecily?
was it?
Oh, I know it's QuickBooks related.
And I had been on your webinars and stuff. I'm like, oh gosh, she's really good. But in I think it was 2013, I went to a zero. Like they had an event in San Francisco. I went to it. I met the founder when I walked in. He asked me how many zero clients I had. I had barely any. And he's like, oh, he kind of like was dismissive of me. And then when I was in the presentation, he made like a sexist joke. And I was sitting there like, I just, it feels so alienating. And also at some of the QuickBooks things, some of the speakers said some things, and I just didn't feel there was space for me. Like,
Mm,
it's like this community is not reflecting my values, Gosh, it makes me like want to cry just think about it. I just felt so isolated. Then when you started kind of expressing who you were, I was like, oh, that's why I always liked her. Like, and it's just like I still feel like I can't break out of whatever space I'm in right now. And I'm really trying hard. And it's kind of seems like the harder I try, the harder it is to break out of it. But I'm just so appreciative that you're here and
mm,
that you make this space and that I have a community within, for me, within accounting that's reflects my values.
mm. You're gonna
So
make me
thank you.
cry. You're gonna make me cry. And thank you, first of all, for seeing me and sharing that because you're one of the special people that has watched this journey unfold. And it means a lot to have you here and to hear you say that. And the words that I would offer at this moment are just keep showing up because I think that if it wasn't for me showing up and meeting people who are embracing who the whole of who they are in business, I wouldn't have believed it was possible. And part of the reason I created this community and this container of space was to bring in leaders that I think that way. And I know at a really deep level, they're my teachers. They're the people who taught me how to do this. And again, I don't like being on the stage all the time. I'm much more comfortable learning in the background. And so to have this container where I can bring those leaders to the forefront to the people who really matter to me is a super special thing. So just keep showing up. And I did it one little piece at a time. I'll never forget the first day I went to a QuickBooks Connect conference and It's a little cold in the office today, but I might as well show off this t-shirt I'm wearing because it's the only one I could wear today that says I cut my own paychecks. And some of you have one of these, and some of you probably need one, so let us know in the chat. But I have a full sleeve of tattoos, and I spent about 5 years wearing blazers, no matter how hot it was, to hide that from the world because I was living under other people's perception that to be a successful woman in business development, I couldn't possibly look this way. I wanted to get a nose piercing, and I didn't do it, because and then, something changed. I started to care a whole lot less about what other people think, and definitely now that I own the show, I kind of do whatever I want these days, and it feels pretty good. But I think that it's only because I am surrounded by other people who are that way, and that encourage me to be that way, that I've been able to step into it. So, essentially, just keep showing up and make one little change. Whether it's in the way you dress, or the way you speak, or the way that you share. You know, one little change at a time leads to that. Awesome. Thank you for sharing again, Cecily. So we're going to cover core values at like the lightest, highest level because, like I said, we have a lot to get through today, and I know myself well enough to know that we're probably going to go over in time. And again, if you need to hightail it out of here, don't worry. We'll put this in your member portal, but this is too good to be rushed. So really, our core values and our unique light are deeply connected. We talked about that braiding, and a lot of my personal core values have to do with equity, integrity, creativity, and sustainability. At my company, our core values have to do with being strategic, innovative, human, holistic, and again, equitable. And your core values in your company should definitely overlap and reflect your personal values. I have a lot of people ask all the time, like, when we're doing this persona work or when we're doing this core value work, how is it okay if these two things are kind of the same as my personal, or is it okay if my persona is kind of like me? And I'm like, that's great. That means that you aren't willing to compromise who you are for who you work with. So it's great. So if you have defined your core values in your company, and you feel called to share them, please do so in the chat. But if not, consider the following. This is a little bit morbid, but I define my personal core values based on this question. And I just had a family member pass away a couple weeks ago. And so I think this really came into super clear perspective for me because we were sharing words about who he was in his life. And it makes me think about who am I going to be remembered as? When that time comes, hopefully many years from now, when I'm wrinkly and old, and I'll be like my grandfather and live to be 98. But really, what are the words that you would want to be remembered by? Is maybe a nicer way of saying this. And from asking this question, I started to jot down, 3 to 6, kind of key words that encompassed what I want people to remember about me. And you can just apply this exact process to your company. So consider, what are the 3 to 6 words you would want others to use when describing your brand and the services you offer. And do a little bit of value creation here. And one word, and you'll take some time in your takeaways to really define these words more fully. But again, if your ideal client was telling somebody else, you should absolutely work with these people, and here's why. What are those defining words that would separate those who share your values from those who do not? So I want to just give you guys a moment to pause here, maybe like a minute or two, to just take a little second to write again in your workbook or your notebook if you have it, and then we'll take a second to share as well. I'm also going to just take a little breath and a drink of water. So just take a moment to reflect, to write some things down, and then if you are eager enough to share in the chat, go ahead and do so. And if you'd like to share out loud, go ahead and raise your hand. And while y'all are writing, I'll just share some of these beautiful words that we've heard in the chat so far. So Rachel shared that her values are about communication, diversity and inclusion, integrity, and a sense of humor. I love the sense of humor, and I totally get that, Rachel. You're that kind of person. Ezra shared, interesting. I've never thought about those as the same, values and gravestone, but it makes sense. My word at the grave I want to be remembered as is beloved. My business/relational values are independent, empowerment, enthusiastic consent. Ooh, love that one. Curiosity, creativity, and courage. These are beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Okay. And again, if you're drawing a blank here, if you don't know, we've got a catalog of content that will help you dive even deeper into this work. You can always revisit it. This is a great journaling exercise. You know, and again, if the funeral thing is too morbid, maybe what are the words you want to be remembered by is another way to put that. So I really believe that our greatest gifts come from what is connected to our core values. Because when we believe in something so strongly, so passionately, we are eager and willing to act, innovate, and create work that builds the world that we want to be a part of. So our greatest gift is something that allows us to embody our values in action. I talked about that before, but values are not for just a wall and a website. But when we think about it, you know, our values, you know, when they're really in alignment, again, this will light us up inside. So what are they? There's a 3-part exercise that I learned from Emily Sicorsi. She's actually coming to teach to our community in July, and I cannot be more excited. She's such a dear friend and such a teacher to me. We play a lot together in the branding space. And so she has this beautiful exercise where if you've got a piece of paper in front of you, you draw 2 lines so that you have 3 columns. And in column 1, you write your non-negotiables. Like the shit that you would, I think Emily teaches it, she says, you know, the shit that you would go to jail for. You know, like the stuff that you would go to a protest to stand up and fight. Like for me, that's my social justice work. That's my anti-racism work. That's my work in the space of equity. And also values that you hold dear. So again, sustainability. I believe in taking care of our planet and teaching future generations how to do so, and making sure that the products that we buy aren't exploiting the earth. Sustainability is totally a core value for me. So writing down those core values or non-negotiable beliefs, that's column 1. Column 2 is the things that bring you most joy. Again, back to like what lights you up inside. You could even go back and look at that list and transfer them over to this column. And column 3, oh yeah, thank you, Mariette. She says, Emily says, what are you willing to be socially disobedient about? So that's column 1. I'm like, what's the shit you'd go to jail for? But column 1, that's, you know, what are you willing to stand up for? You know, column 2, the things that you bring you most joy at the top. And column 3, so things that drive you crazy, particularly about your industry. If we're doing business values, if we're doing personal values, it can just be the things that drive you crazy, period. But the things that drive me crazy in my industry, which is, you know, creative consulting and digital marketing, is one of the biggest ones that led to the creation of the Foundry is people exploiting the underpaid labor of women in the workforce, and in particular, creative women that were looking for more flexible work. So part of the reason I built the consultancy is because I was sick of seeing women contractors be paid too little for their time and their abilities. And I was like, I can build a company that can give them benefits and full-time salaries, and also fuck that. Like, I am not here for that. And quite often I would see that the companies that were exploiting women were founded by men. And I will say we've been able to hire some really talented women that are just looking for flexibility and connection and being paid what they're fucking worth. And it is just, it's a joy. So anything some people are resonating with that one. I'm getting 1,000%, 10,000%, 1,000,000% from Ezra. So the things that drive you crazy, again, those are connected to your core values. If it's shit that you're willing to stand up for, get in a fight about. I was a pretty scrappy, scrappy kid. Again, read more about that when my book comes out. But I was known to get in a fist fight here or there. And I would get in fist fights when some kid was getting picked on. I would get in fist fights when my brother was getting bullied. I would get in fist fights when I was the last to be picked on soccer because I was the only girl on the field. And they would say, you can't play with us, you're a girl. I was willing to get in a fist fight over it because, again, my core values are really, really strongly connected to justice and equity. So the last part of this exercise, when you've got your 3 columns, of course, is to write all those things down and, really dig into them a little bit. And one of the things that, I love that Emily does here when she teaches this is that she talks about the importance of connecting the dots between them. So, you might notice over here in your non-negotiable beliefs that really, really believe in equity, and that you find the most joy in teaching. And the things that drive you crazy is that nobody's talking about this in your industry. And suddenly you've got some dots to connect. And suddenly you've got a core value around equity in action. You're going to be the person who's going to show up and teach those things that other people aren't talking about right now, but that need to be heard. And suddenly you're standing in your unique light and you're calling in all those humans, folks out there. Like, that's how Cecily found me, is because I was willing to stand up and talk about things that people weren't talking about in the accounting technology space. So connect those dots and then star any that are aligned with your company, your culture, and team. Again, you may find some of these are a little bit more personal. The personal and the professional are pretty intertwined in my life these days, but I do a lot of interpersonal anti-racism work that we share about in the company. But that's work that I also do on my own as a white woman. And so, those things, some are about my company and some are about culture and team. So looking at, are they all a part of your company culture? Are they all a part of your company values, or those personal core values? What I expect, for example, in a partnered relationship, or my values when it comes to motherhood, those are quite personal for me. And I might write a blog post about them if I was relevant, especially if it was something that I felt like would benefit this community. But I don't talk about those things as much when it comes to the company. So that's just kind of one way to see the difference. And then your homework assignment here is, again, to just expand, go deeper in this area. There's so much juicy understanding to be found when we sit with and connect with our core values. And so your member portal, again, millions of resources to do so. Your homework and your workbook has some ways to do so. And if you haven't finished this exercise, as I've been rambling on up here, you can just take this away as something to complete. And then, the way I do core values when we do them with clients is we pull out one word that's kind of like, this is what the word is for that value. It might be equity, it might be understanding, it might be collaboration. And then I give it a sentence that describes that value. And in particular, that sentence describes the value in action. It's not a passive statement, so that anybody knows the ways that we show up and we act on that value in the world looks like this. So that's the way we build core values at the Foundry. And if you ever want to work on that one-on-one, our team loves doing it. So awesome. And then bonus points if you take those and you put them on your website, because that's the way you share that work, to weed out the wrong people. But speaking of the wrong and right people, this is where we talk about personas. So your unique light and your core value comes together to show us exactly who we're here to serve. In other words, your ideal client. So it's one thing to know who these people are in our heads, and it's another thing to get those ideas out on paper so that we can design services and pricing specifically for them. And then we can use our marketing to spread that message to attract the right people our way. So again, the foundation that we're building is this. We believe in our worth and our unique light. We then get really clear on our core values. From those two things, we build a sense of who we're here to serve. And then we build pricing and services that match those people. That's the methodology. And then advanced, we get up and we start marketing to them, which we'll talk more about in September. So from here, really what we want to do is to think about and encapsulate all of our ideas around who we're here to serve by creating an ideal client persona or an ideal client personas. Now, some of you may have done some iteration. Again, I'm not the first person to teach this work. Some people call it a client avatar, some call it a persona. We do a lot of persona building for our clients here at the Foundry. And so I'm giving you all like a template today that you can take away to do this work in further depth. But it all starts with just asking this question, which is, who is our ideal client? So in order to align our offerings, we really have to begin by considering who we actually want to work with. And I say this because, after all, in our service-based businesses, we're here to serve others, which means that we're going to be working with other people. And in order to create a prosperous company that we really enjoy working at, we have to start to get crystal clear on who we aim to serve so that the services we create are something that they truly value. So I see the ideal client persona as a set of what I like to call in my coaching work business blinders. Building business blinders or business boundaries is how that we can really start to build services and marketing and sales strategies again and again and again that repeatedly are crystal clear on who they're for. And the other thing that having a client persona really allows us to do is to reflect on our ideas and the strategies we want to take and say, does this work for this human? Does this align with what they're after? Because if it does not, our business has either evolved and we need a new persona, or it's not something we need to be building or offering. And one of the mistakes I made early on is I built a lot of different things. And I loved that season of my life because I had so many ideas I wanted to try on as a new entrepreneur. And I see this oftentimes with coaching clients is we'll build all the things. We'll have 72 services. And then over time, if we're doing our work right, we start to distill down to really what is the core of what we offer, what is the highest value we offer. And the way that we do that is by getting clear on who we're here to serve. And so, raise your hand or share in the chat, if you have done an exercise like this before. But if you haven't, don't worry. We're going to kind of walk you through at the highest level and give you some resources you can take away to finish it on your own. And the key thing I want to say here, one of the things that makes my version of this a little different is I focus on building personas off of real people. So there's a lot of people who build the persona as this fictitious person, from the outer ether of our imaginations. If you already have clients you're serving, I really love to align around a client we're already working with and then to tap further into that. Or sometimes we make like a amalgamation of like a couple clients that are very similar in some way to create one ideal client based off of like if all three of them were to have a baby. So this persona work, in my opinion, is really the key difference between building a business we love versus one we loathe. We don't want to work with people we don't like working with. It's just super simple. And we don't have to either. I think a lot of us think to be successful, we have to say yes to things that pay well or people that might not be perfectly aligned with our values. And this ideal client doesn't just define who we work with, it also defines who we hire, because we need to hire people if we're going to build a team that like and empathize and enjoy working with this type of client. This is, another thing. This is your company to create. So create a company and a culture and a team that likes working with these types of people, and everything will be in alignment. If you hire people that don't give a rat's ass about your ideal client, chances are they're not going to fit for your culture in the long term. So the key to defining our ideal client goes back to our core values. They will often have the same ones that we do, and they will often be attracted to you and your business because by seeing the way you advertise or market or share or write, you will be showing them how you demonstrate those values in action. And case in point, I'm super proud of the people we have in this room today and the people we have in this community. Everyone has been sharing so beautifully. You seem all really well aligned. We really had a really clear core ideal client when we created this community, and we've continued to refine it as the community grows. And we're really proud of the fact that the culture we're creating inside the Finding Fearless community reflects our values and brings together leaders that look exactly like the ideal client we were thinking about when we created this community. So here are some things that I like to consider when I'm thinking about this ideal client persona. I don't like to go into too much of a data dump, but I do like, if we want to get specific, to give them a name, an age, and a demographic, just because it helps us get a little bit clearer to do some targeted marketing in the future, especially if we want to do some advertising in the future. Type of business or industry. Some people, it really works for them to focus on an industry. For example, we have a client who we've been working with who they are niching into family offices, e-commerce businesses, and cannabis companies. And these are all companies that are facing moments of transformation and transition and need help with technology as they grow and scale. And so there's like an overlap between all of them, and they're all very clear industries. Here at the Foundry, we're more interested in the type of business and the type of human, quite frankly, you are. And so, we say that we just work with ambitious humans that are using business as a way to transform the world. So that kind of tees up this idea of more of the type of personality, or the values that those people have. I also like to think about, what are their key drivers? How do they make decisions? What is, a hell yes for them? One of our rules here at the Foundry, when we look at a client, is it has to be a hell yes for all of us, or else it's a hell no. And so part of that is by having all of this information that allows us to look at and see if the client's aligned. Key business attributes, that could be something like, they have manufacturing. I've got some friends who work in manufacturing. They love really highly complex businesses. So that's another thing to consider. The types of media and content these people consume. Where do they show up online? Where do they share on social? And then other elements I like to bring into our personas is, I already said this when I was out of work, key business attributes. So again, is it a complex business? Is it super straightforward? Is it a business that operates only virtually? That's a business attribute. I also do objections. So what might make it so they say no? What are their beliefs and values? Chances are, if they're a really good client, those things are very similar to your own. What are their dreams and visions? All of our clients these days are using business to change the world. And I love that. And it's, it might just be a small corner of the world. We have 3 new clients this month. They're all women who are working to change the world. One of them is focused on of taking on the area of helping women re-enter the workplace. Shout out to Learning Motherhood. They're offering training resources and courses to help women who've been out of work get back into the workforce. Another new client, Mom Up, is in a similar but slightly different space, focused on helping women find job opportunities. And they in particular partner with companies that are looking to hire moms and match qualified women that have been out of the workforce with job opportunities. And then a third new client, Sarah Marsh, is an amazing hairstylist in the city of Seattle that specializes in helping queer folk to go through journeys of transformation when it comes to the ways that they look. And she is opening a salon that during the daytime is going to be a space, for queer folk to get hair that really truly aligns with their gender identity as they transition, or maybe just embrace a new self. And then in the evenings is going to be a workshop space for members of the trans community and members of the queer community to learn about self-care and how to do their own makeup and how to do their hair. And we're getting to build a brand for her. And it's like so delightful. So those are all people that really align with our values, who are all, female-founded companies, and are all using their work to create change in their corner of the world. And they have beautiful dreams and visions, and we feel so lucky to be a part of them. And then ultimately, this last question is, what are they seeking? What is it that they go looking for that ultimately leads to you? Are they seeking someone who can just do their bookkeeping, or are they seeking a true strategist who can help them navigate financially? Are they seeking, somebody who can just check a box for them, or are they seeking somebody that can give them guidance during a moment of transition? So again, this client should be seeking something more than just a job to be done. They should really be seeking something that is unique to who you are or who your company is. And so defining, who that is and what they need is really important. So I'm going to just walk you all through something that we're going to give you as a takeaway. This is an earlier iteration, so it's our old branding, but this is the first version of our ideal client persona. And so we've built a template for this that we are going to give to you all as a takeaway material so that you can go out and build your own version of an ideal client persona. And so we had three when I started the Foundry, and the first one was called the Female Founder. And again, this is our earlier brand iteration, so this has evolved a little bit over time. This persona is based off of somebody near and dear to my heart, my friend Erin. She was one of my first clients. She has a company called Powerful Placenta in Seattle, and she does doula work and placenta encapsulation, and she's a radical social justice warrior that focuses on making sure that women have access to proper maternity and birth care. And she was one of my first people who pushed me to really grow on my own, because I helped her build her brand when she was just starting out. So these photos aren't of Erin, but some of you might see yourself in this persona, and that means I did my job right. They're a type of business selling services, digital goods, or physical products, primarily online. All of her operations go through her website. She's more introverted than extroverted, but she wants to be known. She aspires to make an impact. I've already seen people share in the chat today they aspire to make an impact. And our key drivers is she wanted flexibility and to feel like her work is inspiring and connected to her passions. These are some of her key attributes. Again, these were unique to her and this persona as a whole. I thought about what are the podcasts she listens to? What are the objections she'd have? And these are a lot of my own when I object to something too. I'm too busy. I don't have enough energy or ability or resources to invest in something. And a big one we find for women is I'm not necessarily ready to invest in ourselves. And one of the things I love hearing, we had a testimonial for the Finding Fearless community actually like this just this past week, where somebody showed up and shared, I have been hesitating to invest in myself, and joining this community is my step to invest in myself. And I was like, that's how we know we did our job right. So you will get these in the slides and the takeaway, but you can dig into, her beliefs, what she's seeking. And again, I've got this template that we're giving all of you. So this is all editable. The only ask here when we give this to you is to just, use the power of Google Slides to make a copy of the entire presentation, and then you can download it into PowerPoint if that's your comfort zone, or you can use it in Google Slides to make your own set of ideal client personas. And you may find that you have more than one. And so I strongly encourage you is that, to take this and really make it your own. And I share this content to not just show off who we're here to serve, but also to really to help you get a sense of who your offerings are meant for, so that you can share your unique light with the right people. Those are the people that it really, really matters to. And once we align those two pieces, that's really when we can begin to build a set of services and pricings that emphasize our most important abilities and are highly valued by those we aim to serve. Okay, I know myself enough to know that I am over time, and I'm trying to respect everybody's boundaries, but I have 10 more slides to share. So I'm going to say two things. If you got to go, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you deeply, and I will make sure you have this recording. And if you're here to stick around, thank you for staying. And I've got 10 more slides to get through. So I mentioned this at the top of the session today, but it's my mantra when it comes to pricing. And those of you who know this work know that I will say it again and again. Price is only an issue in the absence of value. Plain and simple. People who push back on your price do so because they do not see or believe in the value of what you're offering. If they value it, people will find a way to pay for this. And I am not necessarily a big fan of Tony Robbins' work per se. Actually, I'm okay with his work. I'm not necessarily a fan of him as a person. There's a lot of BuzzFeed articles on that if you want to read it. But if you know something about Tony Robbins or just any really highly successful coaching figure in that space, you will hear stories of people moving hell and high water to get access to their work. Tony always talks about, people who come through and they've sold all of their furniture to be able to go to one of his workshops. And what I have come to find that when people really value what you have to offer, they will figure out a way to pay for it. It might not be right now. One of the things that I've seen so often, two of these this past week, somebody who has said no about a month ago, and she realigned her budget and came back and said, I'm ready. Can we do it for this much? And I said, yep, you're hitting the price point. Another one we had this week, that story of Sarah Marsh I shared, she took her PPP funds and that's what she's investing in her brand. So, folks who really value your work and your worth are going to find a way to pay for it, even if it's not right now. Price becomes problematic when you're out of alignment. And I started with this. I said, this is really a session about alignment. And alignment could get out of whack when the client is out of alignment with your value or values, or when the work that you're offering doesn't align with the audience or the clients that you have. And so when we feel that our price isn't working, we have to do two things. We have to get clear on our value and our values and our personas and align to find those people, or we need to shift our service offerings to better align with the people that we have if they already are reflective of our ideal client. And so, one of the things I see when people are out of alignment with their values is they're living out of that zone of genius, area of expertise, but they're not really in their highest light. And I can tell you that you will get to a point where you're an expert in something, but no amount of money will make you feel that it's worth it to give your time and energy to that kind of work anymore or to the wrong kind of people. I had a member on my team share this week. She's like, I know I'm really great at doing ad strategy, but I've outgrown it. It doesn't hold any passion or purpose for me anymore. I say, great, let's teach somebody else on the team how to do it and see if they're passionate about it. And if they're not, we got to go hire somebody who running digital ads is their absolute, ultimate thing. And they love it and they love the data and they love the pace of it because she's an expert in it, no doubt, but she doesn't want to do it anymore. The other thing, like I said, is when your work doesn't align with your audience or your clients, you're not selling what they actually need. And so again, that's where you need to either shift to a new audience or new clients or shift your work to align with what they're after. So I always encourage people to have a number in mind when you go into client conversations based off of what you know. If we're selling right, we should do some level of conversation prior to getting on a call. Even that's just filling out a simple form. But go into those conversations having a sense of what you feel the work is worth. So for example, when I go into any prospect conversations, we have a pretty core minimum here when it comes to retainer consulting clients. Our retainer consulting client arrangements start at $2,500 a month. My retainer coaching clients start at $1,000 a month. I have that number going into every conversation because I know what that work is worth at this point. And I know my threshold, what I won't go below unless I am choosing to give back or choosing to mentor somebody. And in that way, I might be a little bit flexible in my price. But those are super special situations, and they're only for the really, really special people that deserve that give. So maybe that number for you is still a price per hour, or maybe it's for the work as a whole. I'm a big believer that there's lots of different ways to price, and they each actually have a purpose for different types of work and different points in time. I don't necessarily believe that we can value-based price across the board on everything, because sometimes the scope is so rapidly evolving or it shifts over time that you might have made more money if you stuck to an hourly rate. So whatever that number is, whatever type of number that is, go into it in these conversations and recognize that if somebody isn't in alignment with that number, that's okay. It just means one of these things. They either don't value what you have to offer, which is fine, that's their problem, or they're not aligned with the work that you're offering. And so you might either need to shift the scope if what they want is something you're really, really love doing and are really great at, or you need to say, hey, I'm not an expert in that, but I would love you to meet. I'm gonna give Rachel a shout out. I'm not an expert in setting up Dubsado. I know a lot about the tool, and I would recommend it to you as a coaching client. But you know who's really an expert in that is Rachel Perea. So go out. Here's her information. Schedule a call with her. So I encourage all of you to come into our Slack channel after this session and share what you are an expert in, because again, the power of this community is that we can network and we can pass business between each other. And I'm just such a big believer in saying no to the stuff that we don't want to do so that somebody else can seize that opportunity and make that income as a result. Now, the other thing I want to say here that is really funny, but I think we oftentimes miss, is the realization that sometimes people expect to pay more. There's been times with myself or with coaching clients when they've come in with a number in mind and they've actually aimed too low that their work felt cheap. And if somebody, maybe it was somebody like me, is a little bit bougie or believes that high dollars equate to the quality of the work, regardless of how efficient you are, they might feel like it is important and that they can afford a quality service, and so they want to pay more for it. Don't rob somebody of the opportunity to pay you more money because that's what they believe the work is worth. So always go in with a number in mind, but always ask first, what is your number? So the way I do this in prospecting conversations is I say, what is the budget you have allocated for this project? Or what is the budget you've allocated for these services? And if the client says, I have no idea, that's when I insert my number. If the client offers a number and it's the same or higher than mine, then we get to have a conversation at that starting point. If the client offers a number that is lower than mine, I hold my boundary firm with the number I came in the door with. And I've taught a million sessions on negotiation, and I will continue to teach those. That reminds me, I taught one for the Elevate Alliance. So Sarah, remind me after this call, we need to go get that session and put it in the member portal because I love talking about negotiation. Okay, so this is another question that was taught to me by my friend. It's a really important one to go into client conversations with. At what price will you not resent the work? She was like, life is too short to hate the people you work with or the work you do. At what price will you smile every time you get an email from the person? At what price will you always be willing to put into 100%? Chances are that price is a little bit higher than the one you would come in with otherwise. So I always double check this number, and I haven't always hit the mark. But anytime I found that I've resented the work, it's because my price was too low. And so this makes me come back the next time I sell those services and up the price. And this is also, we have clients occasionally that are aligned as our ideal clients in all the other ways, but we also have some opportunities to teach them. And I see this a lot, particularly with female-founded companies. We might need some education on boundaries. We need some education, actually not just women. Some people might need some education on scope creep. Some people might need some education on what is appropriate, response times and expectations when it comes to client communication. I'm willing to train somebody to be an ideal client if they have all of the other qualities and they match our core values. But if they are, not an ideal client, I'm not going to ever be willing to put in that work, no matter how much money you pay me. And if you are going to take some extra work, I need to make sure that you're paying me for that extra meeting time, the administrative time, the emotional energy that I'm giving to you because you take a little extra work than others. So I would just recommend you to share if you feel comfortable in the chat. I'm a big believer in having candid conversations about money. Do you have a threshold? You're not going to touch a project these days if it's less than X. For me, 2,500 keeps coming up. I hold a lot of different community spaces, and because people are coming in at different dollar values, those hours tend to break down to about 2,500 sometimes in an hour. And I don't know, another number that comes up is 250. That's kind of our margin number we look at when you break down client projects. We're always trying to aim for 250 an hour if we break down work by the hours that our team puts in. So if there's any really important numbers, whether it's an hourly rate or kind of your I don't go below number, candidly share that in the chat, because it's a different number for everyone, but ultimately we all need to know what our numbers are. In the spirit of that, I like to really point out that value is a dynamic concept. So value is defined by who we're selling to, how we're meeting those person's needs, and all the other players and factors in the market. So these are the four things that I believe define that perception of value. One is your audience. Who are the humans you're here to serve? Who are you selling to? What are they willing to pay? I will tell you, when it comes to attorneys, I am willing to pay a little bit extra for somebody who will get it done efficiently and really knows their stuff. When it comes to other things, I might not be willing to pay that much. And so that's a really important thing, and that's why we start with that persona work. Market price. I wish this wasn't a factor, and sometimes we reach a point where what we offer is so unique and so special that nobody else out there is doing it, and therefore we can charge whatever we want for it, which I find sometimes in my consulting work. But other things like having an online community, there's lots of online communities to pick and serve from. And so when we started this community, we did our research, and there was a range from people doing things for as little as $25 a month, kind of all the way up to about 100, maybe 250 a month. And we really value accessibility. So that's why the Finding Fearless community is $50 a month. The other thing is their pain points, and the other things that I like to think about here is, what are the areas that they need the most help in? But what is that client experiencing? Because if it's something that's urgent, if it's a problem that they want to solve right now, chances are they might be willing to pay a little bit more to get you in there and get it under control. And last but not least, and this varies depending on the way your business operates, but for some people, your market is quite regional. We've got clients who really, really focus on serving local businesses, and that can impact their price point because of the fact that the local economy is priced a certain way. But if your market is global, if you're a virtual business like me, you might have a little bit more room to set your price and make other people come up to that bar. But I'm also recognizing that there are certain thresholds. I have not gotten to a point where I've charged $10,000 an hour for anything, and I don't think that I will get there anytime soon. And that's okay. I do have an ambition to have speaking agreements that look at that price range in the future, and I know many mentors who are charging that much for speaking at that level. And so I think it's really important to just recognize that value is situational. Value is dependent on who you're talking to. Value, it depends on where you're at in your growth journey. It depends on whether or not you've got a team of people to pay or you're a sole prop. It depends on how much you want to earn. So really recognizing that our value can flex and flow and change over time depending on who we're working with is really an opportunity to recognize that it can also grow. And so if you're in this room because you're somebody who wants to be charging more for your services, now is your opportunity to look at that value and to charge more. The other thing that I want to remind you is that we, especially as women in this room, need to be talking about money. You all know I have another company that's all about holding this conversation. There's a community there. If you want to have dedicated conversations just about money, you can show up in that space and get access 2 times a month. But I believe that wealth and economic empowerment are critical pieces to the path of equity. And I would even change the word women here to people. We all need to talk about money, and we need to change the conversation about money because ultimately, truly at the core, there's been a great economic imbalance where money has been held in the hands of a few people who claim that they have all the knowledge and power. And if we're really going to take that resource and spread it in an equitable way, we need to have candid conversations about our work and our worth. To me, I think that if we want to change the state of economic inequality, the state where women are making on average 50 to 83 cents on the dollar, depending on the color of skin they were born into, that we as women have to be talking about money. So I just want to give a little shout out for those of you who were brave enough to share. Marriott shared, $250 per hour feels good for a one-on-one. And when you're doing a group experience, it changes. When you're sharing in a group experience with more attendees, you may have been to be having a different value. My group fee feels good around $150. I'm the same way, Marriott. When I'm giving back, which is what I feel like I'm doing right now, my value flexes. I also sometimes speak in situations for free because I know there's somebody in the room who's going to become a coaching client for me. So Mariette knows this. I have spoken at events that she's at for free on my own dollar and dime to fly down there because I know that they will reap rewards in the form of coaching or consulting work. And so again, value is a dynamic concept and it's defined by us. It's not defined by our clients. So again, with this mindset of collaboration that's so critical to this community, what are other women in this group selling their services for? You know, are you charging an hourly price? Do you have a flat fee? Do you have a budget threshold that you want your clients to be thinking about when they get started? You know, anytime somebody comes to us, and unfortunately it's something we see quite common, is a scarcity mentality around money. And they say, yeah, I want all my social media done, and I want my newsletter, and I want X, Y, Z, and I'd like it to be done for $1,000 a month. I smile and I say, everyone's got to start somewhere, but our minimum price for this kind of services starts around $2,500 a month. And we can help you grow into that by, if you want to continue to DIY those things or DIY in collaboration with a virtual assistant, but have some coaching and mentorship and feedback, our coaching programs start at $1,000 a month. But that's where you're at right now. If you're ready to play a little bit bigger, or when you're ready to play a little bit bigger, we're here for you. But that's me holding a boundary, you know, and it's really helped me to build a lot of revenue for our team. And again, I've had a lot of situations in my world where somebody knows where we start at. They work their ass off. They hire a VA who could help them in the interim. And then they get to a point where they're ready to invest in that next level of service. And I love nothing more than watching a woman grow her business so that she can invest more in her growth. Again, I don't like robbing people of the opportunity to pay more or to invest in themselves. So if you feel called to share, you know, what are the prices that you offer? What is the pricing that you've seen other people sell for? This is the other really critical thing. I will tell one last story here today, which is that part of the reason I teach this work is because when I was a sole prop consultant, I was taking on my first big consulting client. She's a dear friend. I'm seeing her this weekend. I'm driving down to Portland and I'm having dinner with her on Friday night. And I have known her my entire career. And her and I both jumped into our own entrepreneurial endeavors at the same time. And she wanted to support me and I wanted to support her. And so she said, come consult on us, help us build this brand and a lot of our go-to-market strategy. And, you know, because at the time she was working with a couple of other people, they, you know, did the proper thing and took proposals from a couple different consultants. And when I presented my proposal, I sweated over it. I thought it was a really big deal. I was asking for, I think, $2,000 a month. And that felt like a huge deal to me. And it was going to take a lot of work. And just the proposal itself took a lot of work. And at the end of submitting my proposal, she wrote back to me and she said, I would like you to review this other proposal and I would like you to redo yours. And that's all she said. And I opened up the proposal and it happened to be from somebody else who had similar expertise. I actually knew the person in my industry, think really highly of them. And they were offering a scope of work that was smaller than what I was offering. And they were charging $12,000 a month for that scope of work. And I was like, oh my God, we can do that? We can charge that much? I was like, holy shit. I was blown away. And what this woman was doing for me was saying, without even saying it, your work is worth more. And I am so grateful to Kristen for doing that for me, because I would have continued to play it small. I went back and I put a proposal together for $10,000 a month. And in a month's time, I had doubled my revenue. And that's really when my company started to take off, is because I had the money to afford people to help me with the work. I started hiring contract designers who helped me with the brand development. And suddenly what had been just me operating as a sole consultant became me building a company. And it would not have happened if it wasn't for that moment. So I am eternally grateful to her, buying her drinks on Friday. But this is also really important that we as women do this for each other, because statistically speaking, we hold the majority of power over the purchasing decisions in households. And we are also on the path to become the biggest entrepreneurial force in this country and in the world. And we are out here all the time making transactions and making money. So it's time that we start talking candidly about our budget, about how much we get paid, about what we think are fair prices for our services, and really share so that we see each other be able to buy and build and create and be a part of companies that we believe in. And so if you feel cautious to share today, that's okay. But by sharing, come in our Slack channel and say, this is a proposal I'm putting together and I need some executive eyes on it. Am I aiming too low? I will hop in that feed and I will tell you. Other people in this community will come into that feed and they will tell you. And this helps us know where our blind spots are. It will help us see where we're selling ourselves too short. This will show us market thresholds and sensitivities and what other people are pricing similar services for and what they're willing to pay for those services. So y'all, we gotta collaborate. We gotta be talking about money. The other thing I want to leave you with today is a reminder that money does equal power. I wish this wasn't the way the world worked, but I also think that money doesn't have to feel toxic. Money, in my mentality, is an energy. It's a resource that we can flow between each other and give back to each other and to the causes and people that we care about. So I recommend that you seek out someone in this community, even if it's just on a one-to-one coffee call, that you can be connected to and start having open, candid conversations about money and pricing so that you can continue to grow and shine in your life and in your business. And, in addition to the people you're meeting here today, there might be other people. This might be a mentee. This might be your girlfriend who's just starting a new company. This might be your kids, whoever those people you are in your world that you could be talking to about money. Just having that conversation in itself is transformative. And it also means that we're going to change that dynamic of power around money. Another reminder I want to leave you with is that helping each other helps all of us. I am sharing about this money work. I'm sharing about pricing for prosperity because I know that we all wouldn't be in this room together if we didn't believe that doing this work together, collaborating together, is about helping ourselves as well as each other. So talking about money is a critical form of collaboration for underrepresented founders and for underrepresented individuals in general. If we're not the ones holding the dollars, we need to be talking about how we can change this flow of money. So by knowing and believing that there is plenty of work and money to go around, and by talking about money, we can all benefit and help each other be able to charge more and make more in the long run. So with that said, I just want to wrap up with a couple action items for each and every one of you. And there are some beautiful shares in the chat. There are women saying, I'm ready, to have a coffee conversation. There are people, who are ready to collaborate with all of you. So please connect with each other in Slack after this session. These are some actions you can take from this session. These are also all in your workbook. So take that away, do your work. Dig deeper into this. Go take advantage of the resources in your member portal. Start, if you haven't already read You're a Badass at Making Money, I love this book particularly because it gives some great money mantras that have helped me when I was on my path of money transformation. I would write them places. I would remember them when I was going into sales negotiations. It's a really good resource that kind of gives us more of that badass boss kind of mentality when it comes to talking about money. Go do your core value and ideal client persona work. If you've already done this work, just take a revisit. I'd love for you to look at it through the lens of some of the ideas I offered today and some of the takeaway resources we're giving, and just give it another go around and see if there's an opportunity to refine further. I also want you to start thinking about your offerings from the perspective of your ideal clients. So the next step, if we were to take the full course, which is coming in September, would be to build a list of products, prices, and services that align with those ideal clients. And so your next step on your journey, if you do this on your own, is to look at those personas you build and say, what are the things these people need? And build services and pricing around that. You've got a workbook to take away with 1,000,001 journal questions to ask yourselves. And then I just ask you to please share what you uncover in this work with the members of this community in Slack. So if you have questions on the journey, we are here for you. If you have things you want to share, again, Slack is the way to do that. We're going to put all these resources and notes and recordings into that member portal. And I am just so, so grateful for all of you for being here. Slack us, email us if something comes up. For those of you who stayed extra, thank you, thank you, thank you. And if there's anything else you want to ask, throw it in the chat now. If there's anything else you want to share, throw it in the chat now. But I am just so honored for the opportunity to get to teach this work. It is really one of my highest callings. And again, we're going to teach the full month-long program in September. If you're a part of this community, you'll get early access to that program. But thank you all for the opportunity to come and share this work today, because it means a whole lot to me. So I'm not seeing any questions come through in the chat, so I imagine we've all got to run on with the rest of our days. But thank you, everyone, for the time, for the intention, for the sharing. I will see you on Slack, and I will also see you next week for our workshop on breathwork. I am so excited to bring my breathwork teacher, Jenna McDonald, to this community, so I can't wait to see you all there. All right, take care of yourselves, and I will see you in Slack or in that session next week. Take care, y'all.